ein sehr grelles Licht, was mich gerade blendet. Ja, ansonsten. Welchen Witz? Also, Herr Versuch, der Witz kommt nach. Haha. Ja. Also ich glaube, jetzt hört man mich gut. Hört man mich gut? Ich weiß nicht. Hallo, hallo? Also ich bin gerade aufgestanden und habe dann noch was gegessen und bin dann zur Schule. Und das war mein Tag bis jetzt. Und jetzt stehe ich nachher an der Kamera. Boah, das Licht. Die arme Person, die nachher hier sitzt. Also echt. Ansonsten hört man mich gut da hinten? Hallo, hallo? Ja. Jetzt bin ich ja Mikro 2. Mikro 2, hört man mich? Hallo, hallo? Mikro 2. Ich bin einer daneben. Hallo, hallo, hört man mich? Hallo, hört man mich? Hallo, hallo? Hört man mich? Hallo, hallo? Jetzt bin ich am Mikrofon 2. Hallo, hallo? Jetzt bin ich ein links daneben. Hallo, hallo? Mikrofon 2. Wieder dieses grellende Licht. Also die armen Leute, die kriegen hier einen Augenkrebs. Ansonsten ja. Yes. Schwibididip. Hallo, Echo. Aber mich gut? So, jetzt bin ich an Mikro 3. Ich bin an Mikro 3. Ich bin an Mikro 3. An Mikro 3 bin ich. Man hört mich. Gut? Hört man mich gut? Echo. 1, 2, 3, Kamera. Ich höre mich. Echo. Jetzt bin ich an Mikro 4. Jetzt bin ich an Mikro 4 ganz außen. Jetzt bin ich an Mikro 4. Hallo? Ja, ich erzähle was. Ich sehe 3 Kameras. Wieder dieses grellende Licht. Hab keins. Genauso wie kein Lieblingstee und keine Lieblingsfarbe. Jede Farbe hat. Nudeln mit Tomatensauce?
Gib mir mal ein 5 Minuten langes Kochrezept, wie du Nudeln kochst.
Oha. Also, zuerst kocht man Nudeln. Ja. Hört man mich?
Also auch relativ
Ja.
groß. Kann man einen Schritt
Na?
Gib noch ein bisschen runter.
Jetzt wurde hier gerade mein Pult verstellt. Hört man mich gut? 1, 2, 3 Kameras. Grelles Licht von vorne.
Pepe, kannst du bitte noch mal ganz kurz checken, ob der Monitor hier läuft? Weil ich höre mich gerade nicht. Über diesen Monitor müsste ich mich noch mal hören. Wenn ich hier zu den Leuten spreche, ja, perfekt, sehr gut. Jetzt habe ich hier ein kleines Signal. Das braucht gar nicht so groß, weil ich glaube, ich höre mich auch gut über die PA. Nur ein kleines bisschen. Danke. Ja, so ist jetzt perfekt.
Echo. Hallo, live aus Rostock. Willkommen zu BALMUN 25. Ja, hier sitzen dann nachher viele Leute, da sitzen Leute und da redet nachher einer. Hallo Elmar. Hallo Richard. Hallo Leute da oben, ich sehe euch nicht wegen des grellen Lichtes. Aber ansonsten hört man mich gut, oder? Das war der Linke. Ja.
The foundation of every state is the education of its youth. With this, a Greek emphasized the importance of education for coexistence in a society over 2,000 years ago. His name was Diogenes, and he was proved right. Today we know that education is the cornerstone of our modern civilization. We live in a time when nothing really seems impossible. All of this, every technology, every social theory, every skill that we know today would never have been possible without the creation and passing on of knowledge over generations. Education is the one resource that cannot be mined or harvested. It is almost endless but difficult to obtain. We can give it to others without losing it ourselves, duplicating it in almost unlimited number of times.
But we must also constantly safeguard and protect them. In today's world, education is facing new challenges. So what could the education of future generations look like? Perhaps we should ask someone who has been guiding students for years as they take their first steps into working life.
I've been a teacher for 43 years by now, and of course it's always important to think about whether school is as I imagine it should be. And I sometimes ask myself, what should be different in the future? And maybe the most important point is that teachers and students are kind of partners in learning. That is the more important as the different generations have different opinions about the future. They do have different means to learn or to teach, and I personally believe I can also learn a lot of my students' knowledge when they teach me.
Wrote on slates, today we can fall back on far more advanced resources.
Making education fit for the future requires investments in many aspects. One thing is more central today than ever before: digitalization. Appropriate use of digital media in schools opens up new opportunities in the classroom. According to a UNESCO study from 2023, 85% of teachers stated that digital tools have improved their teaching methods. In addition, a survey by the Federal Statistical Office shows that 70% of female students in Germany find digital learning tools motivating. But school should also be a place of curiosity. It should be important to us to really grasp the content. To do this, theory and practice must both be part of the lesson. This is the only way to make connections really clear.
The world is moving at breakneck speed. More communication, more traffic, more energy, more consumption, more waste. The advantages of today's world are hard to overlook. But we also need to tackle the problems that come with them. In a world that requires constant growth but can only provide limited resources, it is up to us to take a responsible and environmentally conscious approach to our lifestyle. That is also something we must pass on to future generations.
So my appeal to all of you is use those few days to really deal with the topics that you have, to find friends, to also have fun, but to basically become tolerant, do something for peace, do something for our environment. And I'm absolutely sure that young people like you who are engaged will do a lot to make our world a better place.
Kennt ihr nicht jetzt? Oh, sonst fangen wir jetzt an. Dann Frieda, fang mal an. Aber das ist auch jemand. Ja, das ist auch tricky. Ja, egal, dann lassen wir es jetzt so. Okay.
Would the House please come to order? The opening ceremony will begin now. Distinguished guests, fellow delegates, welcome to the 17th Annual BALMUN Conference. To my left is our President of the General Assembly, Ilian Bordet. And to my right is our Deputy Secretary General, Atossa Khoshyam. And next to her is our second Deputy Secretary General, Ansu Kang. We, the Secretariat and the whole BALMUN team, are delighted to see you. For the next 3 days, you have the chance to debate on a topic we are all confronted with daily. This year's topic is questioning and qualifying the education of future generations. Therefore, we
delegates, esteemed guests, dear Matthias Breitkopf, the man to make a difference, and last but not least, dear godmother of BALMUN, Regine Koch. To all of you, a very warm welcome on the occasion of the ISG's BALMUN Conference 2025. This year's topic, focusing on education, is and always has been a key issue of societies in general and of governmental and international organizations. It's a little bit like the German soccer-related saying, jeder ist ein Bundestrainer. Everyone's a head coach. We've all been there, went to school, lived the daily routines, succeeded here a little, suffered there a little more. Some of us even got stuck here. We all have an idea, but who's got the plan? Who's in charge? Are we doing this to empower our younger generations, to bring peace and prosperity to everyone in the world, or do we just keep young people busy throughout the day so their parents can join the workforce, the sane and personal Moloch those young people will be swallowed by one day or the other? Do we teach young people the workings of economic and political systems so they can find their way around, participate, and create better living conditions for humanity? Or do we allow them to be just part of the flock, ready for the exploitation of their brains and their dignity, sent into conventional, hybrid, or digital wars that make very few even richer and leave everyone else only poorer in everything, and thousands dead? Part of the answer is this Model United Nations conference. Strip away the word model, and what remains is real. Students from across the globe gather under the premise of simulating politics, and yet what unfolds is genuine political discourse. They adhere to formal rules, meticulously research diverse agendas, and debate global issues through the lenses of different nations. Most powerfully, they engage in personal interactions, making it far harder to dismiss one another, even when their perspectives diverge entirely. Beyond the guidance of our inspiring teachers, I extend my deepest gratitude to the senior BALMUN staff. Amidst their own demanding exams and term papers, they have orchestrated yet another transformative conference. My thanks also go to every member of the BALMUN team and our partners whose tireless efforts, countless hours of preparation and passion have made this event extraordinary. As head of school, I could not be prouder. It's a privilege to witness such dedications from students and educators alike. Writings on the wall. When you walk down the stairs of the United Nations headquarters into its basement, you will see the following quote by Nobel Peace Prize winner Malala Yousafzai written in big letters on the wall. One child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world. This change, however, requires deliberate action. It demands that we question outdated systems, those that perpetuate inequality or stifle creativity, and qualify education by making it inclusive, adaptive, and forward-thinking. Education is not merely the transfer of knowledge, it is the foundation upon which just, peaceful, and prosperous societies are built. Education is a human right. As Nelson Mandela once said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And indeed, history has shown us that nations that invest in equitable quality education reap the rewards of stability, innovation, and social cohesion. According to UNESCO, each additional year of schooling can increase a country's GDP growth by 0.37% annually. The Global Partnership for Education reports that if all students in low-income countries acquired basic reading skills, 171 million people could be lifted out of poverty. Furthermore, the Institute for Economics and Peace found that higher levels of education correlate strongly with lower levels of violence and greater political stability. Yes, yet, despite these truths, 258 million children and youth worldwide are out of school, and millions more receive an education that fails to prepare them for the challenges of the 21st century. We must ask ourselves, what kind of education truly empowers future generations? How do we ensure that learning fosters critical thinking, empathy, and global citizenship? A truly empowering education does not merely transmit information. It teaches students how to question, analyze, and synthesize knowledge. In an era of misinformation, algorithmic bias, critical thinking is not just an academic skill, it's a survival tool. Future leaders, allow me to burden the following imperatives on you. Encourage interdisciplinary learning, connecting history to current events, science to ethics, and literature to social justice. Replace passive lectures with debate and project-based learning, where students engage with real-world problems. Challenge dominant narratives by centering marginalized voices in curricula, because history and the future is shaped by more than just the powerful. Integrate social-emotional learning at all levels, teaching conflict resolution, active listening, and ethical decision-making. Promote diverse literature and storytelling so students see the world through other people's lived experiences. Encourage service learning and community engagement, bridging the gap between classroom theory and social impact. Teach media literacy and digital ethics to combat polarization and hate speech. Emphasize foreign languages, intercultural exchange, and diplomacy, like Model UN, to break down barriers. Fully fund public schools and dismantle systemic inequities in resource distribution. And ensure accessible higher education and vocational training, because learning should not end, nor should it begin, with a mountain of debt. Because what's the alternative? A stagnant society where inequality deepens, democracy erodes, and divisions widen. A progressive education system must be inclusive, adaptive, and bold, one that doesn't just prepare students for the world as it is, but equips them to change it for the better. And I'm very proud to say that very few educational projects embed and envision these imperatives as deeply as the Model United Nations conferences around the country and around the globe. Here I stand, and I'm so glad to know that my school, thanks to all your hard work, is part of this vision. Writings on the wall. One child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world. One teacher. Ladies and gentlemen, Regine Koch has changed this school, and for so many of former, present, and future BALMUNIs, she has changed the world a little. This year's conference does not only mark the end of a 43-year-long professional and emotional devotion to and career in educational service. It marks the beginning of a transitional period in which all of us are meant to follow her example and inspiration, to be the change we so desperately claim to be necessary for the world. Dear Regina, your upcoming retirement will be, of course, an unretirement or a never-tirement, because that is what you are, this is how you are, and this is who you are. And man, have your colleagues and generations of students benefited from that. You will stay close, engaged and active for your baby might have grown up, but cannot do without you. Ladies and gentlemen, I say this very clearly to you. You owe her the best conference ever.
Thank you, Mr. Riemer, for your warm welcome and insightful speech. Please accept this token of our appreciation. We would also like to appreciate Professor Elisabeth Brommer, Rector of the University of Rostock, and this year's patron of the BALMUN conference. Unfortunately, she cannot be here today due to her busy schedule, but she has written a letter to greet all participants, which can be found in the BALMUN program.
Our next speaker will be Mr. Stefan Bhan, the Senator for Youth and Social Affairs, Health, Schools and Sport. Mr. Bhan, you now have the floor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, dear Secretary General, dear members of this conference. I'm very proud and glad to be part of this conference this year once again. I'm allowed to be part of this since a very long time, and it's always a very nice thing to do and a very nice place to be. And even this year, it's very difficult to speak after Mr. Riemer. Because what did he leave? He left a speech about the meaning of education, about the needs of education, and so what can I say? Let me tell you that I am proud and thankful that I was part of some international negotiations in my former life. And what I can tell you is, in negotiations, in diplomacy, you will hear several things several times, but from different persons. And sometimes it's interesting to hear what's different in saying the same things. And even this is something you have to learn, and something mankind has to learn to understand each other. It's not always important to think to know what he or she meant, but to know what he or she meant. This is nothing you can write down in a book. This is nothing you can be told. This is something you have to learn by experience. And honestly, I believe that in this world we are today, most of us say what they think that it's right, or say what they think that should be said. But they don't listen. They are sure to be there and to be right. But honestly, most times, nobody is fully right. There are some things that most of us, I hope every one of us, is sure. We should be sure that mankind is equal. But is it? We should be sure that we want that mankind is equal. But does everyone want? And what can we do that everyone want? And what can we do that everyone is? Ladies and gentlemen, I guess this is one main topic when you think about further education. Because how we educate today, mankind will be tomorrow. And this is important. Very often in my profession, when I speak about education, about schools, I'm asked, how many digital boards do you have in schools? In Rostock, several thousand. We have no green walls anymore. We only have digital boards. In every classroom, in every public school, there is digital boards. We have in Rostock more than 11,000 digital devices. Thank you so much. I've learned English in this school. So we have more than 11,000 devices in public schools in Rostock, and this is pretty much. Maybe it's not enough, but it is pretty much. And well, it is very, very important that everyone who is in school here is able to use digital devices and is able to learn how they can enforce you and how they can protect you, but even to know how they can challenge you. Mr. Riemer said it's not only important to know something, but to be critic with everything you see. And you know so much about fake news, but how to find fake news, and how to protect from fake news, and how to fight fake news. We see stable democracies that are erupting because of fake news. So I guess it's quite simple that we have the need in education to much more have an eye on seeing fake news and fighting fake news and stand for democracy. Especially in the Western democracies, in Western Europe and in Northern America, we are a little lazy. We don't fight for democracy anymore. We take it as given, but it is not. So, in my opinion, a main thing for further education is strengthen democratic thinking. And no, freedom of speech is not the allowance to say what you want. That's not freedom of speech. But today, an orange-haired man says to say what you want is freedom of speech. It is not. Protect everyone, not to be doxxed or to be frightened, is part of freedom of speech. And that is why in Germany we have the rule that your freedom of speech ends where the humanity of others, where the self-care of others is frightened or is not sure anymore. And I guess this is something we have to teach them a little more than we did in the last centuries, in the last decades, because we took it as given, but it is not. And honestly, 10 years ago, everyone was sure that we have to talk much more about sustainability, about the protection of environment, about climate change, about saving water, about saving any resources. And today we see that everyone who's speaking in the public about sustainability and about protection of an environment earns a smile. But it's not anymore the main topic. Well, there are other very important topics, but our planet is just one. We have no other. This is still true. So let's talk about how to protect this planet, or if we don't think about the planet, maybe we think about further generations and our children and grandchildren in these further generations. I want my children and grandchildren to have a planet Earth they can live on. And ladies and gentlemen, in further centuries, education was there to educate machine workers and to have a mass education, not very individual. This is not education how we need it today. It was okay for the last centuries, but it is not for today. Today, education must be very individual, because the work is individual much more than it was before. But what we see is that lots of people do learn a lot about digitalization, about everything, but not about living. As you were told, I'm not only confident for schools, but too for youth. And that means I'm confident for the protection of children. And what we see in kindergartens or in schools is that more and more children, and not only because of poverty, are sent to school and having no lunch boxes. That children are going to the kindergarten and haven't been to the shower. And once again, not just only because of poverty, but because parents don't know how to be parents. So maybe we have to think about how we can enforce this, not on the timetable in your schools, to be parents. I think that's not true. But what can we do that thinking about the own needs in nutrition, we have so many adipositas, so much adipositas in the world now, and we have so much hunger in the world now. But where is the medium? We have to be sure that everyone who's well educated knows about this and cares about himself or herself. And when I say himself or herself, even in these times, it's very important to say it's part of education to accept that everyone decides on his, on her own, what he or she wants to be. The most important thing is that we are human, and this is where we are equal in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Bhan, for your inspiring words, as well as continuously supporting our BALMUN conferences over the past years. We truly appreciate it. Please accept this token of our appreciation. Now we would like to introduce our first keynote speaker, Ms. Fortman. Felise Fortman has been a consultant for education and higher education policy at the Konrad Adenauer Foundation since 2013. Before that, she worked at the University of Hamburg and held various positions in EU research policy. She has also worked for the European Commission in Brussels and for the European Molecular Biology Organization in Heidelberg. After the speech, you have time to ask questions. Ms. Felise Fortman, you now have the floor.
Would need the adapter. Just I don't have the right adapter. There was a young technician before here who said that they might. Okay, wonderful. Okay, I think we're on the right way. Wonderful. So I'm happy that this works. Thank you very much for the invitation and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to speak here about the future of education at the BALMUN conference. What a fantastic and inspiring event, and what a big topic. For me, this is actually my first time here in Rostock, and How many of you are here for the first time as well? Just show me, hands up. Wow. And how many of you are even from abroad? Okay, so this is truly international. For me, this visit is also something special, since actually my grandmother Hannah was born in Rostock in 1898, and my great-great-great-grandfather Karl, you see him here, was a teacher here in Rostock. And yeah, here the little girl, actually that's my grandmother. And this is the school building where he worked. You see him here in front of the school, so it must be somewhere in a suburb, or let's say in a little village out of Rostock. And the classroom back then probably looked like this. I didn't have an original picture, but at that time classes consisted of 50 to 70 children. The subjects were fixed: reading, writing, math, religion. There were strict rules, discipline, and tests. If you failed, you repeated the year. That was 120 years ago. And yet, doesn't much or some of it still sound familiar? We might have added flexible seating, laptops here and there, and maybe project weeks once a year. But the structure, which defined subjects, teacher-led lessons, and tests still remain surprisingly similar. And when you think about it, there are not many institutions or areas in our life where things still look like 120 years ago. Looking back, it was a huge step forward that Prussia introduced Schulpflicht or compulsory schooling in 1717, making it the first place in the world. And here in Mecklenburg, it was introduced in 1850. But clearly, schools all over Europe were designed to produce what was needed or wanted at that time: conformity. Obedient citizens, industrial workers, readers of the Bible in the more Protestant countries, and disciplined soldiers. And at least 20% of the male cohort, which was born in the years around 1890, the years in which my grandmother was born, will actually later on die in World War I or II. So 20%, that's 1 in 5. Still, education is the success story of the 20th century. In 1900, 20% of the global population were able to read and write. And in 2000, 20% were not able to read and write. So that's a huge success. And not everything from back then is obsolete. We still need to teach writing, math, and reading. They remain the foundation of education and participation in society and economy. And in fact, we urgently need to get better at this. At the moment, in Europe, 30% of 15-year-olds lack sufficient mathematical competence, and that means basic competences. And 25%, 1 in 4, can actually hardly read. So here we need new approaches and sharper focus, for example, tutoring in small groups, and we have to start at an early age, already in kindergarten. And yes, research shows teacher-led instruction, well done, with reliable feedback, is still one of the most effective methods of teaching. And yes, learning still needs discipline, self-discipline, and we all know learning takes effort, struggle, and time. There are no shortcuts. But let's be honest, these traditional principles of learning and schooling are no longer enough. The world has changed, and it's changing faster than ever. New tools, systems, and disruptions emerge in ever shorter cycles. And we don't know what schools will look like in 50 years, and we don't even know what jobs will look like in 20. That's why we need to rethink education. What will you and what will tomorrow's students actually need to know. Of course, as said, and you have mentioned it before, academic basics are essential because without them, we can't access or understand knowledge. But students today also need the ability to keep on learning and adapting constantly throughout their lives. They must learn how to learn. And I'd like to know, who of you has actually had classes in school on how to learn and how your brain works best? Just show me hands up. Okay, so at least some of you. Focus, emotions, sleep, nutrition shape our memory and our motivation. And above all, we all learn best when we understand the purpose, when something feels relevant, when we think this matters, this connects to my life. So schools have to connect to the real world outside. Yuval Harari, probably one of the greatest thinker of our times, puts it like this. In the age of Google and AI, it's not long about what you know, but how well you think, adapt, and reinvent yourself. So you will need, and it has been mentioned before, critical thinking and the courage to ask questions. You also will need creativity and flexibility, especially when things don't go as planned. Self-regulation and self-efficacy, difficult word, Selbstwirksamkeit. To stay focused, motivated, even in chaos, and above all, the belief, I can do this. Studies show that if you believe you can, you try, you may fail, but you will try again. And social skills like empathy, teamwork, and communication. And in New Zealand, there's even a school subject dedicated to relationship building. These so-called future skills are not nice extras. They are essentials, and they must be trained starting already in kindergarten and definitely in school. And yes, AI will change everything. So who of you has actually used ChatGPT for homework? Openly or secretly? Okay. So I just can tell you, your teachers use it as well. And we all use it. And it's great. And at the same time, it's a good place to actually use and apply your critical thinking skills. And adaptive intelligence systems can be a great tool in schools. They adapt to your level of knowledge, and they could shift education from an industrial, everyone gets the same model to a more personalized one, where every student can learn on their own pace. And that's a big opportunity. And I'd like to know how many of you actually use adaptive learning systems in school, for example, like better marks in math, you might know. Are there already students? Okay, it's more on this side. Okay, so that's a start already. And despite this exciting possibility, AI has limits. As again, I'm a fan of Yuval Harari, so in the 21st century education, we must connect more to the body and emotions because that's what we have and AI does not. That's why I think schools will remain physical spaces of connection and community. And Corona reminded us how vital human interaction is. Even in the digital age, students need to belong. And at the center of these spaces are not machines, but people, teachers. AI is powerful, but it won't replace the human in the classroom because learning itself is a human business. But here's the thing. It's not just the students who need to keep learning. Schools must learn too. And politics must create the conditions for a learning school system. And as education expert Anne Slivka from the University of Heidelberg says, a learning school system can only grow if everyone in it, teachers, school leaders, policy makers, see themselves as learners. That means teachers need time to learn and collaborate. Schools must learn from each other. And politics must create space for progress with clear goals and data-based decisions to see what actually works and what doesn't work. So what's the future of the classroom? Will it look like this? This is actually a school in the south of Germany in Wutterschingen. There might be still some leftovers from the times of my great-grandfather Karl, but the mission of schools has changed. Not the production of obedient citizens, but the active formation of capable and thoughtful individuals. Young people who can ask good questions and who will become agents of change, who can make a difference. That is, and that will remain the task of education. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your compelling speech. We appreciate your time and effort very much. We now have time for 3 questions. Please raise your placard or your hand until a member of staff approaches you with a microphone.
Hello. Okay. Do you think that AI also poses a threat to critical thinking because it takes that process away from students? For example, when they just copy their homework straight off of ChatGPT and don't think about it themselves. Don't you think that there are also many risks in the use of AI like that in school?
Actually, yes. And as I just said, we really need critical thinking. If you just think about ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is always flattering, it applauds. Even if we have stupid, actually, answers, ChatGPT is always embracing and welcoming. And I think this sometimes leads to think we are right, and maybe we are not right. So we definitely need critical thinking. And I think this is one of the main tasks in school, which we need to be able to do fact-checking in social media. And I guess most of you will do that. What you read, you can't really take it for truth. And I think that's why we also need real journalism. And so media competence is probably one of the most important subjects which have to be learned and trained at school. At the same time, I think AI, as said, has huge advantages, and well, if we want or not, it will change the way education works at the moment. Yeah, I see another question.
Okay, good morning. What is, in your opinion, the most sufficient way of actually learning and of seeing knowledge and of learning knowledge in the most natural way that our body can offer?
Could you repeat the beginning again?
What is the most sufficient way of learning in a natural way that's healthy for our body?
Learning in a natural way.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think, what in school is sometimes lost if we just focus on rationality is that we also have emotions, and that our emotions and our well-being have to be part of learning. And this is maybe sometimes forgotten because of there's no space for that. But that I think sometimes just breathing helps to calm down. And I think it's actually important that we learn more about our emotions and relationships, and that they will also be part of learning. And I think in the last century, the focus on rationality was strong, and that is very important. but there are many other factors that our body that also have influence on our well-being and on our way to get in contact with other people. So I think this is something where school also needs to focus stronger. And there starts, I know that there are yoga teachers now sometimes in school, there are meditation classes, and I think this is something which is actually a good way and a good direction. Nice. There's another question over there, or here.
First of all, thank you very much for your speech. And I wanted to ask you what you would point out as the reasons for the lack of progress in the education system when it is such an important part of society.
The reasons for the lack of progress, that's a very good question. One thing I'm also worried about is to see the demographic change and to see that we're living in a society which gets older. I think the median age in Germany right now is 47, and it might be like that in many other countries. And so I think we really need to find a way to be more present in politics, and because the voters get older as well, so there are many subjects which are important, like pension and health, but we need to find a way to show that actually education, in my opinion, is one of the most important fields. And I think this doesn't always work. We have just seen in Corona times that the focus was maybe more on the elder people, which is, I understood, but still that schools kept closed where at the same time you could go to football stadiums. And so we need to make clear, and we need to find ways to show to politics that actually this is a very important field, and also you have to find ways how to be represented in politics. I also think I'm worried about that, and I think all of you need to find ways to actually get active in politics or make yourself heard.
Answering the questions. Your speech has provided important perspectives that will undoubtedly accompany us in the coming days. Please accept this token of our appreciation. Now I am pleased to introduce our next keynote speaker, Ms. Claudia Grunberg. As Deputy Director of the Institute Heritage Studies, she develops and implements educational initiatives with a particular focus on engaging with young people. Her work is guided by a student-centered, transnational and action-oriented approach, aiming to foster a sense of responsibility for heritage among diverse audiences. From 2022 to 2024, she led the Young Climate Action for World Heritage project. Her commitment to supporting education provides a good foundation for the flourishing of the debates. Claudia Grunberg, you now have the floor.
Hello everybody. Wow, this room looks so different standing here rather than sitting there. What a wonderful building, what a wonderful welcome to this meeting. And I'm very glad that you invited me because I just love talking to young people about what I like most, heritage. And this is why I'm here today. I have a quest, and this quest that I'm working on in my life is protecting world heritage for future generations. And I know this is not exactly your topic, but maybe I can give you some impulses that you take with you, and through these days, maybe you think a bit more of what you actually bring from your past, from your countries, to this place, to this conference, and maybe you find some inspiration to use it. That would be amazing. I want to tell you a bit about my background. Why? Because you're all young and you at some point will choose which way to go. And I think, at least from my perspective, the way I chose is not very widely known. Like, we know there's teachers and we know there's doctors, but what do we know about this world of UN, UNESCO systems? What can you become? How do you get there? Well, what I did, I had no idea I will end up working with UNESCO, but I studied cultural studies, and then I studied actually UNESCO World Heritage Studies. And yes, you can study that. And yes, you can study that in small towns in Germany, in Cottbus. And I just loved this study because we were in Cottbus with 40 students from 20 different countries, and it was amazing. So I can just recommend to you these international study programs. And then I started working in this field of World Heritage, and my focus was from the beginning on, and I guess also that's one reason why I'm here, World Heritage education. Because I believe that only if we understand about the past and we connect with it, we can make something of it for the future. I also work in World Heritage interpretation, which means to think about how do we communicate the importance of these sites and places, and I also do World Heritage nominations and management. If we think of heritage, many of us immediately have this picture of these 7 wonders of the world in our mind. They have always captivated the imagination for centuries of humans. But, as you may know, only one of them has survived. Only one of them we can still see. From some, we even don't know if they ever existed. Maybe it's just a story. So, what I ask myself when I look at this is, what do we actually choose to preserve? Why does it matter? And how do we as a global community safeguard treasures? And here I come to this idea of world heritage that I want to bring to you today. I very much hope this movie works now. Let's just have a look. Okay. No sound, but it works. You can just appreciate the pictures. To see how they actually really relocated this old temple up the mountain hill. And not only I think this is amazing, I think that was really something that moved the world at that time. That were very, very important pictures that kind of made a change in how we think about heritage. And we tend to say today that this action of international solidarity to protect heritage was like the initiating moment for the UNESCO World Heritage Convention. And this is a very important document that was ratified in 1972. It's like the basic, the heart, the foundation of all that we do with World Heritage today. So the World Heritage Convention is a treaty, an international treaty, by UNESCO, and UNESCO, as you may know, is one of the organizations of the UN, and it is, and that is why I find UNESCO very interesting, the only UN organization with a mandate on culture. I believe culture is very important, especially if we talk about peace building and human rights and all the things that the UN has at its heart. So I think UNESCO is a very, very important body. And the World Heritage Convention is really one of the, let's do it like that, one of the success stories of UNESCO. Some even, like, if you ask people on the street, like, what do you know about the UNESCO, very many immediately come up with, oh, there's this heritage and this World Heritage. So this is really closely interconnected, even though, of course, UNESCO does many, many other things. So what does the World Heritage Convention do? Like, you have seen these pictures. So the World Heritage Convention was the first international instrument to recognize that there is heritage that is of outstanding interest, not just for the people who live in it, not just for the people who live next to it, not just for the people in a nation, but for all the people in the world. And that this needs to be preserved by the global community. And that was a totally new thought that hasn't been in any treaty like that ever before. And that idea that if this heritage would be lost, that the whole humanity would lose something was new in that way how it was formulated in the World Heritage Convention. So the innovative point of this convention was that there is heritage of outstanding global importance, that the global community needs to protect that heritage for present generations, for us, but also for future generations. And one more innovation was that culture and nature were for the first time in such an international big treaty thought together and put together in one convention. We have seen cultural heritage protection before in other treaties, but not like that here, mixed with nature. So what is actually that World Heritage I'm talking about? Well, first of all, World Heritage is a site-based convention. That is very technical. It just means we talk about places. We don't talk about food, we don't talk about great works of art, we talk about places when we talk about World Heritage. We talk about cultural heritage. Here you see the castle in Schwerin, which was nominated World Heritage last year. We talk about old beech forest, and we talk about mixed heritage, because sometimes you can have both, not only sometimes, very often you have both in one place. So the World Heritage Convention, as I've said before, was a success story. In 1975, 20 state parties came together and ratified the convention. By now, we have 196 state parties. I usually say it is the most ratified convention in the world. And that is, I think, still true. But as you all know, politics is changing, and changes are not good at the moment. It looks not good at the moment, so we might lose some state parties. Let's see if the US will stay in UNESCO. They have dropped out before. And there's a good chance we might lose some member states, which is definitely a problem because member states also finance the convention. So that's not just a symbolic thing, but it really has an impact. But what the World Heritage Convention did, and I think that that's really the biggest success, it created this worldwide network of a whole lot of experts in culture and natural heritage that care for heritage and that work together to protect these heritage sites. So how many sites, saying it's a success story, do exist in the world? Can anybody give me any number, any guess? Just shout. 10,000. 10,000, oh my God. No. Go a bit less. Huh? No. 1,223. But I'm a bit surprised. Usually the numbers people give me are much lower. So no, we don't have that much yet. Let's see if it comes to the point where we have so many. But we have 1,223, which is already a lot, cultural and natural heritage sites, which are of outstanding value to humanity. What are these sites? I just show you some where I've been to, because that's the ones you usually connect most to. I've been to Angkor Wat in Cambodia, an amazing site, jungle temples everywhere, really beautiful. I've been to these ancient beech forests, and I like this heritage site very much because it's a transnational site. That means that this site is not only inscribed by one country, but by 18 countries in Europe who came together to say, we want to protect this heritage site together, so we inscribe it together. So for the protection, not one country is responsible, but all of them. So I think these transnational sites are amazing for international cooperation on heritage protection. One site that I'm very closely related to, and that's why I like your building so much, is the modern housing settlements of Berlin. This is a Bauhaus settlement, and I have currently written an extension, a nomination that is now lying with UNESCO and is being evaluated, so I'm a bit excited to see how that goes. Another heritage site that I can just recommend you if you should ever go there is Petra in Jordan, a wonderful site, a very interesting site also because we have nomadic people who actually live in that place, and that is always something UNESCO deals with a lot. How do we preserve a place and at the same time give people who live there, who live from the people who come like me as visitors, to the opportunity to have a good income, a livelihood, and how do you balance preservation and living at a site. I've been to Cuba, to Old Havana, wonderful old historic town. One of my most favorite sites, the mining region Erzgebirge Krušnohory, because I have worked there for several years during the nomination phase and then later. A big German-Czech site also, so really at the border uniting these two countries. And the last I wanted to show you is the Waddensee, where I did many projects with students also. It's a trilateral site, so Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands working together to protect that heritage. So I showed you a whole lot of very different sites right now, very, very different. So what do they have in common? The outstanding universal value, that's what they have in common. This is a very technical term now, but I give you a bit of technicalities because I think you can deal with it. So this outstanding universal value just says this site compared to other sites has a global importance that is maybe a bit more significant than others. It doesn't make it a better site. Any heritage is valuable. This just says this is special because of that and that and that. So in order to meet this outstanding universal value, you have to show that you meet one of the 10 criteria that are laid out. You have to be integer and authentic. Authentic means it shouldn't be completely replaced. Integer means it should be complete. All the parts that belong to it should still be there. And then you need to protect and manage it also. And that is very important. So you can't just nominate a site that doesn't have a good management system and where you have no idea how it will survive in future. You need to show that you make all the efforts to protect it for future generations. So if you can show all this in a nomination document, which is 100 pages thick, then you might get to be a World Heritage Site at some point. And how does UNESCO actually manage to protect these sites? So we have these over 1,000 sites on the World Heritage List, a lot of sites. How do we do that? How do we make sure that they are actually protected and that they are passed on for future generations? Well, the thing is, this is an international treaty, but the responsibility to protect the site lays within the state parties. And you know that from the UN system, from other treaties, from other UNESCO treaties. So this is very important that like as a state party Germany, we recognize that we have 54 World Heritage Sites in our country and that we have the duty to protect them. There is international assistance available. So if you need it, you can request it, but as you hopefully can imagine, not everyone can. So we as Germany would better not request international assistance because there are many other countries who definitely need this assistance much more than Germany. So this is always a question of really how the resources of a country are and just very urgent requests get accepted. And one more thing, because people often tend to think that if you get World Heritage, you don't get money. You don't get anything. You just get the duty to protect your site. That's what you're supposed to do. Of course, countries use it for marketing and for tourism, and they shall, and that's all nice, because that benefits local economy, and that's okay. But you don't get money from it. The idea is to protect the sites. And that's the basic mission of the World Heritage Convention. I was so fortunate to go to this annual World Heritage Committee sessions twice in my life, once in Cambodia and once in Germany. So this committee is a bit similar, like something you will do here, and there's also models that play this with young people. There's youth forums that do pretty much the same thing you do here with the UN, with the World Heritage Committee. So this committee, there's 21 elected representatives from state parties, so these 196 state parties elect 21 people from the different regions, so it's all very representative, and they come together once a year. To do what? Well, they nominate World Heritage Sites. That's a very important thing. It's big in the news always, every year when that happens. They put sites on the list in danger, which is very important because that's the reason why the convention exists. We want to protect these sites. Some sites are in danger, so they're immediately put on the in danger list, and that means they can get more international assistance. They get more awareness also. They examine reports on state of conservation. So if you are a World Heritage Sites, you have to report to UNESCO every 6 years or so how you're doing, how your site looks, if everything is well and conserved, and they have to look at these reports. Imagine one committee, over 1,000 reports annually, so that's a big task. And they, of course, decide on international assistance requests. These sessions are really interesting because the people who go there are usually people who come from, or who have a strong cultural identity, sometimes come from indigenous contexts. So when they speak, they often speak their national languages, even their local languages. There's all these international standards. You only approach someone saying, Your Excellency, things like that. So it's a very, very interesting atmosphere, and it's great to have so many people at one place who all want just to talk about heritage, and I really, really love this committee sessions. So this is a bit how it works, just because you're doing a bit a similar thing. But I want to draw your attention to something else, the global distribution of World Heritage. I think if you look at it, you just can't avoid noticing that is not a very equal global distribution here. The yellow points are cultural heritage. So we have a lot more cultural heritage sites on the World Heritage list than the green ones, which are natural heritage. The red ones are the ones in danger. That's good that we don't have so many. And then you can't avoid noticing half the sites of the World Heritage list are in Europe, and that is still so. UNESCO has realized that already in the 90s, and they made a big global strategy and how to balance it better and a lot of things. Well, it's still that way. We made it a bit better, but it's very difficult to change this. And this is not, of course, not due to the fact that Europe has more heritage. It's due to the fact that Europe has had more capacities in writing World Heritage nominations and protecting sites. So all the other countries and regions, of course, have valuable heritage sites, and what the UNESCO is trying to do right now is to give them the capacities that they can nominate more sites. So when we go to a World Heritage Committee session, for instance, people or state parties who have never nominated a site have the first right to nominate a site. Transnational sites will be chosen over sites in just one state party. So with these measures, step by step, we try to balance it a bit more equally. But of course, we do live in this world of power imbalances, and power imbalances show in such treaties and also in how we protect our World Heritage globally. Oops, that's the wrong direction. And I want to draw your attention to something else. Climate change is one of the most pressing and fastest growing threats to world heritage. And I'm sure you're all aware of climate change, but I'm not sure you're all aware of how bad climate change is for our heritage. What we always ask first is, are there any World Heritage sites that are not impacted by climate change? Not only probably not, I would say no. Are some World Heritage sites more at risk than others? Yes, absolutely. That's why we need international assistance. That's why we need to look at the global scale. Where do we need to go first? We need to understand the risks and the urgency of the threat to take appropriate action. And that is not easy because we don't know how climate change will evolve. We don't really know what will happen at different sites. Sometimes we can make assumptions, but these are just assumptions. So we need good protection systems that are flexible and that react to this fast and faster change that we are having. Just go on. So here you see just the flooding of Venice in Italy, very iconic picture, I think. The coral breach in the Great Barrier Reef has been on the list in danger for ages, and let's see if it will be removed. It's always a big discussion with Australia. But we don't need to go far. We can also stay in Germany. This is the tree death in the Harz region. I don't know if you've been there recently, so that's a very sad picture to see, I really have to say. So because that is, but that's the one thing. The one thing is that World Heritage Sites are threatened by climate change. The other thing, and the more important thing I think, is that if we save World Heritage, we can actually help to save the climate. Why is that? And this is also said by the EU working group. Heritage needs to be considered in the fight against climate change. And that's what we do with the project Young Climate Action for World Heritage. And I want to show this project to you because this is one of my most beloved projects that has just been finished, and I hope we go into the next round. So we had 6 participating World Heritage Sites in Germany, 21 UNESCO-associated schools, 5 countries, and 1 question. How can we protect World Heritage and the climate? So a bit similar, like you, the students came together from all these countries, met at the different World Heritage Sites. Why did we do that? Why did I say, okay, we need to talk to the young people? Well, World Heritage is a resource for learning. From World Heritage, we learn from the past, but we don't learn about the past. We learn for the future. We learn about how humanity and nature develop. We learn about diversity on a global scale. We learn about solutions people found and how we dealt with conflicts and catastrophes, because they are also part of the heritage of humanity. So all this we put into this education project, and our aim was to educate people at World Heritage Sites about climate change, to enable them to change something. World Heritage Sites are, by the way, really, really great learning places, and we have heard that before, because we can really experience a site with all senses. It's emotional learning. It's learning at a place. You can feel it, smell it, touch it. You can go around. And when you experience climate change the whole day, like I can just tell you, like this is the site in Berlin where I come from, Palaces and Gardens of Potsdam and Berlin, and the gardeners told us that 80% of the trees which are standing in that park will die in the next 10 years due to climate change. This does something with us. This is not only a factual information, this does speak to our emotion. And it did speak to the emotion, certainly, of the students who were there. But as we worked in international teams, students took courage from thinking, oh, we are not alone. Actually, here are some other people, and they're from other countries, and let's connect, and let's do something together. So that was a really valuable experience, working on climate change on such a not easy topic together with international students. So in the end, what did they do? Like, we took them to the World Heritage Sites, we told them about climate change and how important heritage is. And then we let them decide on their own what they wanted to do. So they came up with art exhibitions, with mystery dinners. We did even an escape game underground in a mine. We had podcasts and movies and games and all these wonderful things. So they really, really came up with cool ideas. They presented them at the World Heritage Sites. And I think this is what we should do when we think about education in future, like going with outside in the real world situations. Let students face a challenge which they might not have the solution for, because we also don't have it. We don't know how to protect these sites in future. But let's just educate each other. Let's talk about it. Let's reflect about it. And let's have ideas and share these ideas. So this is exactly what we did in this project. This is where I want to finish right now, and I hope I could give you some impulses about how to use heritage for the future, and I'm here for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Grunberg, for your in-depth speech. The delegates will now be able to ask questions. Please raise your placards or hand, and a member of staff will bring you a microphone. We will start with here in the aisle.
Thank you for your speech. In the beginning of your speech, you talked about your journey towards your position. And my question would be, what advice would you give young adults who are interested in politics, just like us, to manage to rise to a position like yours when we can make meaningful change?
I didn't get the whole question. So you want to know how you can get into situations where you can make a change?
I want your advice. What advice, one advice would you give us, how we can get to positions like yours where we can make a change?
Okay. Good question. Well, I think what I found important is I didn't wake up one morning and thought, oh, heritage is the thing I want to do. But I saw the study program and I immediately knew, okay, this is, wow, this is amazing, I want to do that. And nobody is looking for someone who focuses on heritage education, believe me. There's no, you can't just open the newspaper and somebody announces a really nice position saying, oh, we need a World Heritage Education Advisor. There's no such thing. So what I did, I always said, but I want to focus on this topic, and I found my own ways of doing it. So I raised my own money for my own projects. I work freelance also. I work in big projects and in small projects. So I'm always negotiating because I want to do this topic. And I have done this now for 10 years, and I thought at the beginning, oh, where will this lead? And right now I feel that it's quite an okay way to go. But of course you can also go to the big institutions, but I think what is important is like keep your focus on the topic, go to people, go on their nerves and say, I think this is important and I want to do that. And I found that actually quite some people do listen if you tell them that a few times. And yeah, keep open to possibilities. There's not just this one way and this one position, there's many ways to go.
Would you say your work is frustrating at times? Because I assume there's a lot of lobbyism in that sector, especially seeing as these economic or these cultural heritage sites are often economically interesting to a lot of countries for their development, for example, because there's oil reservoirs, whatever.
Yes, of course, it is. I remember this moment that I had when I had to give a course at a public education school, Volkshochschule, we say in Germany, and it was the day when Russia started the war on Ukraine, and I was sitting there saying, how am I to talk about heritage today if we have this war going on? And then I looked into the convention and I was like, oh, but it's all about peace and cooperation. And then that day I just told them, let's please, we will talk about, I will present some World Heritage Sites in the Ukraine, we will talk about them, and we will talk about what's going on in the world. And that was, I think, the best lecture we ever had in that course. And yes, I do think it's frustrating, but I think it's also good to be where the frustration is. I mean, if you are working in a system that's all nice and shiny and always works, what do you want to improve? So what helps me a lot is that in opposition to my colleagues who only often work with nominations and protecting sites, I work with young people very often. And that helps me so much. It gives me so much motivation to stand with young people, talk to them, because then I feel, oh, there's other people who are actually interested other than me. And that helps a lot to get the motivation. And yes, it's a frustrating thing, but I think also we achieved a lot. Like this international great system is there. We do watch out for our heritage. There will always be new conflicts to come, but we need to just deal with them.
Thank you for your hopeful response.
Thank you. There was just the part about the trees dying in Germany. I feel like the photo is a bit misleading because it's actually due to a certain type of bug that eats that certain type of tree and the overplantation of that certain type of tree.
Well informed. Yes, thank you. That is true. So so what does that have to do with climate change or things like that? So the World Heritage Site in Ramelsberg, it's like that. There was mining, and because people wanted to mine more and more, they cut down the old forest, they planted a new non-resilient trees who just led to one kind of forest, no diversity, nothing at all. And then 200 years later comes the bark beetle and eats all these trees up and they die. And now I come and say, well, this is climate change. Yes, it is, because it wouldn't have happened that fast without climate change. The threats are all already there. Climate change doesn't invent new threats. The bark beetle is already existing. Floods have always existed. Fires have always destroyed heritage. What climate change does, it speeds up these projects. It makes it much faster. It makes that some threats are suddenly together at some point where before there was one threat, that threats kind of wander around and suddenly we have the bark beetle also there and also there. So yes, it is due to the history of the site that this site is affected so much. But it's climate change that sped up this process, and it is actually exactly what I wanted to show you. Let's learn from the past. Here we have a heritage site that was not treated sustainable, although the word sustainability in Germany comes from exactly that forest. It was like the guy who was there, who planted the new trees, who said, oh, this we do nachhaltig, sustainable. So it's quite funny that it comes from there, and now we see that it wasn't sustainable at all. So sometimes we have ideas and they don't work. And what I really like about the Harz region is right now that there's so many local initiatives planting new trees, trying to build up the new forests, which is really inspiring and cool to see.
Due to time constraints, we will be moving on. Thank you again, Ms. Grunberg, for your thought-provoking speech and for taking your time to respond to all of the questions. Your speech has provided us with valuable information which will benefit us throughout the debates. Please accept this token of our appreciation.
Thank you.
Our next speech will be delivered from the President of the General Assembly, Ilian Bordet. Ilian has actively supported and helped us prepare for this year's conference. Without his contributions, this conference would not have been possible, and we are grateful to have him as our President of the General Assembly. Ilian, you now have the floor.
Thank you. You are all replaceable. ChatGPT can do almost anything, everything. It can process massive amounts of information, solve problems quicker, write speeches faster, make more rational decisions, all without mistakes. So much of what we're being taught in school can now be done with a simple prompt. What we've surely all heard in hallways is what I ask today. Why do you and I still go to school? What can we learn that AI can't? And what will we use it for? Goldman Sachs already estimates that as many as 300 million full-time jobs could be replaced by AI worldwide. That's as many people as there are in the United States. What can you do better than ChatGPT that makes you needed in this new age of AI? Is your school preparing you for it? It is the responsibility of schools to get us ready for life, and a life without AI is at this point not going to exist. We are past that point. But are we really just learning to remix content like AI in school? I personally don't think so. Of course, I have sat in class sure that I will never use the things learned again. Yet, that isn't the importance of education. Education is shaping future generations, providing skills and knowledge we can then shape into new ideas that move us forward. If we just replicate information, we can't use it. School is a place that fosters creativity and where you should learn critical thinking as well as social skills. If someone asks me what the most important thing that I learned at BALMUN is, my reply wouldn't be that I internalized procedure or learned how to write a convincing speech. Evidently, AI could do that better than I can. Instead, my answer would be that it gives me the opportunity to discuss ideas and implement them together with other brilliant people, to find solutions. That's diplomacy, that's BALMUN. AI makes the connection of information faster and more efficient than ever before. However, if we want to break out of a cycle of the same ideas and content and move forward, if we want to create rather than remix, the human mind is unbeatable. Consequently, this should be the new area of focus for educational institutions. It should focus on a way more practical approach, focusing on how the content should be used, not memorization. It should focus on promoting creativity, critical thinking, and social skills. It says a lot about society and the place that education has in it, that when comparing a classroom of the 1970s and from the 2020s, they still, in most cases, have a teacher in the front talking, the students taking notes to then solve practice problems. Yet, almost all aspects of life have changed drastically, while education has in a way smaller scale. The time has come that we start reconsidering what and how we will teach our future generations. If we do BALMUN right, and instead of learning inapplicable theories, simulate the real world, be creative, and further hone our problem-solving abilities, BALMUN will be a place where we can immediately make active learning a reality. And if the rest of my education would teach me half as much about these things in a semester than what we learn here in 3 days, I would never sit in a classroom asking myself, why do you and I still go to school? Thank you.
Thank you, Ilian, for your time and effort into making this conference happen.
Yet there is a lot more to discuss at this year's BALMUN, for this year's BALMUN theme, questioning and qualifying education for future generations. Questions like the necessity of the increase of access to education and LEDCs, bridging the digital divide, and AI in education systems are all complex issues requiring high level of diplomacy to find an international consensus upon. I hope that you, the participants of this year's conference, will foster international understanding and cooperation, especially in times where the international community is facing many challenges with some influential global leaders undermining the value that the UN represents. I hope that you all discover the pleasures and skills you can receive from this conference and create a lasting memory. Now, as President of the General Assembly, it is my distinct honor to declare the 17th Annual Baltic Model United Nations Conference as officially opened.
The BALMUN film team has prepared an opening video for the conference, which we will be viewing in a moment.
The foundation of every state is the education of its youth. With this, a Greek emphasized the importance of education for coexistence in a society over 2,000 years ago. His name was Diogenes, and he was proved right. Today we know that education is the cornerstone of our modern civilization. We live in a time where nothing really seems impossible. All of this, Every technology, every social theory, every skill that we know today would never have been possible without the creation and passing on of knowledge over generations. Education is the one resource that cannot be mined or harvested. It is almost endless but difficult to obtain. We can give it to others without losing it ourselves, duplicating it in almost unlimited number of times.
But we must also constantly safeguard and protect them. In today's world, education is facing new challenges. So what could the education of future generations look like? Perhaps we
Due to technological difficulties, we will move on. But we are beyond grateful for our film team for providing us with such a creative introduction to the conference, even if we couldn't see it until the end. But still, a big round of applause, please.
The video is available on YouTube. We would also like to thank Ivy Düffer, a 10th grader at the Innerstädtisches Gymnasium Rostock, who put her time and energy into making the conference art, which is also on the cover of our program. As you can see on the program, there are 3 people with different skin colors, diverse backgrounds, and different religions, and they are reaching to hold each other's hands while walking up the stairs, portrayed by books. This action shows each and every step we are taking all over the world in order to all receive the same education with the same quality.
Now, a selected number of delegates will deliver a speech. We will start with the Ambassador of Canada and continue in alphabetical order in groups of 5 to 6. The group will meet in front of the podium and hold their speech one after another.
Additionally, there will be the right of reply, but the speakers are not allowed to answer. Please, delegates, keep that in mind. Also, please hold your applause until all speeches are finished. Afterwards, the speakers return to their seats and we will continue with the next set of speeches. The speeches should not be longer than 90 seconds. For the right of reply, raise your placard and a staff member will hand you a microphone. We will start now with the first group consisting of Canada, China, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Denmark, and France.
This year, we as Canada will be focusing on further enhancing our school system. This has to happen not only through a thriving economy that ensures our schools are well funded and therefore provide a safe environment for our next generations to learn in. The environment someone grows up in can influence the success of learning in a great way, which is why we want to focus on making plans to improve our global environment as well as our social environment, which can decide if a person will succeed in life through the education they are granted, for example, because of their social standing. In this conference, we want to achieve our self-set goals and make sure that our next generations are protected by knowledge and therefore can help in saving all our futures. Thank you.
Please hold your applause till all 5 opening speeches have been delivered.
If you do not change direction, you may end up where you are heading, said our Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu. Currently, as we approach the dawn of a new era and the challenges of the future that it brings, many of our education systems are still moving in the direction of the past. With rapidly developing technologies, we must change direction and implement them into our classrooms and teach the children of our nations how to use these technologies, such as artificial intelligence. Through helping other nations build and establish educational programs, such as universities in Africa, China not only builds infrastructure, but opportunity and positive global development when confronted with the challenges of the future. So let us change direction, away from the limitations of the past, and create a new path to ensure we do not end up where we are heading.
Honorable chairs, esteemed delegates, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea stands firm in its commitment to shaping the future of education in a manner that prioritizes ideological clarity, national unity, and unwavering discipline, rather than through so-called progressive education filled with distractions like creativity and free thought. This year, the DPRK is not only presiding over the Supreme International Council for Knowledge Optimization, or the SICO, but also the National Union for Knowledge and Enlightenment, or the NUC. Through these esteemed organizations, we have gathered invaluable insights into the most effective education systems. But we don't wish this knowledge to remain confined, and hence today, we proudly propose the establishment of a United Nations Department of Juche-oriented nurturing and guidance, short, the UNJONG. The UNJONG will ensure that education worldwide aligns with the values that have led our nations to unparalleled success. This weekend is the time to question and qualify what we call education. We, the DPRK, urge all nations to follow our path to secure the future for the next generations. Thank you.
Honorable chairs, distinguished delegates, today there are 258 million children out of school. Last year's theme, promoting peace, progress and prosperity in a polished world, is not behind us. It faces us in this year's theme, a topic in the state of the global education. The delegation of Denmark is grateful for the opportunity to speak today, but though we must admit, in times like these, finding the right words is not easy. In conflict zones, classrooms are being bombed, in authoritarian states, curricula are rewritten, and even in peaceful nations, disinformation spreads faster than facts, and students leave school without the skills to live in a fast-paced society. Denmark believes education is a right and not neutral. It is one of the most powerful tools we have to build resilient democracies and peaceful societies as well. as developing as a country. But to serve that role, education must be rooted in inclusion, truth, mental health, digital literacy, and the courage to question. We must invest in education. We must invest in the peacemakers of tomorrow and the geniuses of today. We must invest in the children and teenagers and prepare them for a future they will have to shape in the face of climate crisis, technological evolution, and social division. So it is a moral obligation to question and qualify the education of future generations. Thank you.
Honorable Secretariat, distinguished delegates, and everyone behind the scenes. It takes the knowledge of yesterday for a better understanding of today and the formation of tomorrow. Those are the words of the paleontologist Yves Coppin, expressing the significance of educating the youth, the constructors of our future world. But what is it that makes education substantial? It is to provide knowledge, to understand the functioning of today's world, to understand grand terms thoroughly. Genocide, drug epidemics, and the lasting impact of colonialization. Those are all words that we will encounter very often in our daily lives. Yet, we should be taught not to become blind to what they truly express. So, the next generation learn to think autonomously, to be aware, and to be attentive. The delegation of France believes in education's ability to transform, where passing on knowledge from yesterday collectively forms our tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Next are the ambassadors of India, Pakistan, Republic of Korea, Sweden, Syrian Arab Republic, and Thailand. Please approach the podium. Please keep in mind to hold your applause till all speeches are finished. Thank you.
In the real world, it is Darwin who wins, not Einstein. These words, spoken by Keynote and Prison Break, capture a half-truth. In matters of global security, survival instincts often override idealistic visions. For India, this means deterrence is not a luxury, it is a necessity. India stands for peace, but we are not naive. While we talk disarmament, Pakistan stockpiles in secret. No oversight, just danger next door. And we're supposed to stay quiet? Not happening. India has not signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, not because we oppose disarmament, but because we oppose discrimination. We support a universal, non-discriminatory disarmament process, based on verifiable steps and mutual trust. We do not seek war, but neither can we afford naivety. In a world where stability is fragile and intent is unpredictable, deterrence remains indispensable. Let us pursue peace, but let us not forget to protect it. Thank you.
We live in an age where security threats are no longer limited to borders and weapons. The greatest challenge we face today is the crisis of opportunity, and it begins in the classroom. Education should not be a privilege. It is the shield of peace, the foundation of equity, and the voice of a generation yet to come. We know the struggle. From conflict zones to classroom, we have seen that a child with a book is more powerful than a man with a weapon. We remain steadfast in our belief that no peace can last where minds are silenced. We ask, what future exactly are we preparing for if education is commodified, politicized, or shaped only by the powerful? As a member of the Security Council, we have seen firsthand that peacekeeping missions cannot replace nation building, and nation building begins with learning. We call on this assembly to question education that excludes, to disqualify systems that divide, and to rebuild curricula that shape thinkers, not just workers. In the crowded cities of Asia, the refugee camps of Gaza, the fields of rural Africa, we have seen that our children are watching us. Let us not fail them. Thank you.
Honorable President of the General Assembly, esteemed delegates and dear conference staff, the Ambassador of the Republic of South Korea is thankful to be represented at this conference. Knowledge is under threat from either misinformation or conspiracy theories that preach hate and lies. However, one piece of information that is not under threat is the fact that people in poverty will suffer when it comes to education. It is a global fact that the wealthy will have a better education. Furthermore, those who do not have a good education are more likely to fall into conspiracy theories and misinformation. The first victim of misinformation will be history. Humans have done cartoonishly evil things in the past. The moment misinformation takes root in our society, the people in power can erase this history. Napoleon said, "History is written by the victors." We as humanity are at war with those that wish to spread information and conspiracy theories. Do we want those who spread lies to control our future, or do we want those who seek truth to control our future? South Korea chooses the latter.
Honorable Secretariat, esteemed delegates and guests, with the long-awaited overthrow of Bashar al-Assad in December 2024, the beautiful nation of the Syrian Arab Republic can finally begin to restore its cultural and historical identity. For over 5 decades, our hopes and calls for a brighter future were suppressed and distorted by an oppressive regime. Yet, we have fought tirelessly, not only to defend our present, but to build a stronger foundation for generations to come. This brings us to the theme of this year's BALMUN conference, questioning and qualifying the education of future generations. To secure a prosperous future, we must critically reflect on the past and learn from its mistakes. But reflection alone is not enough. It must be paired with decisive action and a sense of responsibility. Our youth are the driving force of future change, and it is our duty to equip them with the knowledge, values, and tools they need to lead with wisdom and integrity. In the aftermath of the immense disruption Syria has faced, we are committed to rebuilding and improving our broken education system. Our foremost priority is to establish a safe, stable, and organized learning environment, one that replaces fear with hope and empowers the next generation. Thank you.
Honorable Secretariat, distinguished delegates, esteemed guests. The delegation of Sweden greets the General Assembly on behalf of His Majesty King Carl XVI Gustaf and expresses its deep honor to participate in this year's conference. Are we educating for the future or simply repeating the past? All over the world, students are navigating underfunded systems, teachers are undervalued and under-resourced, and lack of digital integration keeps far too many students disconnected from progress. Today, too many young people are left behind, not only due to a lack of access, but also by outdated systems that reward memorization over curiosity and obedience over innovation. Sweden believes that education must be more than the transmission of knowledge. It must empower, it must inspire, and above all, it must equip students to meet the urgent challenges of our time. From climate change and conflict to disinformation and inequality, we call on all nations to work together, not to standardize minds, but to open them. Not to replicate what is, but to imagine what could be. The delegation of Sweden reaffirms its commitment to global cooperation, inclusive learning, and future. Every child is given not just the right to learn, but the freedom to think. Thank you.
I ask everyone in this room to think about school systems all around the world with little to no changes. I want you to think of our future in danger just like our pastly earned knowledge. It seems dystopian at first, but it's real and it's closer than it ever was before. Internationally thinking, schools do not make enough changes that would be essential to the future of our next generations. That is exactly why attractive jobs for teachers are more than needed as an international model. I'm talking realistic standards to not have to buy yourself into the profession. We are all here to support children all around the globe that are still not being taught how to think for themselves and not being taught how to think in logical structures. This is not an issue to be solved by Thailand alone, but an issue to be tackled by us all as a unity. When looking at the balance between work time and pay globally in the aspect of teachers, there's a huge gap, making the job of teaching far more unattractive than it should be for our infrastructure to rise, to grow further and better worldwide. Because teaching is undeniably one of, or even the most important job to pursue, because content teachers are the key to a successful development in innovative education. So protect our earned knowledge as a collective, to protect our future and the future of the next generation, we demand less bureaucracy, more realistic standards for teaching and teaching positions, as well as higher paychecks. Thank you.
We will now be entertaining 2 rights of reply. Please raise your hand or your placard and wait until a member of staff approaches you with a microphone. Ambassadors, please keep in mind that you are not allowed to answer.
Thank you. We just like to raise a right of reply to the delegate of France. Since they said we think as the delegate of Russia that it's about time that they start investing in education, since it might prevent their own government from being overthrown every 50 years. Thank you.
This is a POI on China. I just had the question, how do we expect to invest in the integration of digital methods of learning when there are many countries still trying to scram for resources simply just to build a roof under which children can learn and be taught? Would we accept a growing disparity that leaves the underdeveloped countries behind?
Finally, the ambassadors of Ukraine, the United Arab Emirates, the United Kingdom, the United States of America, Uruguay, and Vietnam will hold their opening speeches. Please approach the podium.
Esteemed delegates, honorable chairs, honorable secretariat, I am representing Ukraine. Over the next few days, we will be discussing the theme of qualifying and questioning the education of future generations. But I'm not here only to debate with you. I am here on behalf of the citizens of Ukraine to call for concrete actions and your support. Since the war began, 3,000 schools in Ukraine have been damaged or destroyed. Millions of students have had their education disrupted. Some are learning in bunkers, others have no access to education at all. In the war with Russia, Ukraine is holding the line for Europe, risking everything to not only defend our homeland, but the democratic values we all share. The war has been very dark and has taken a great toll on our country and our people. But what keeps us going is the hope that one day the war will be over and we will rebuild our country. I think we all agree that education is the most important building block for the future of a society. But for us, education is not only a matter of future, but a matter of hope. We need your help to rebuild our education system and strengthen our hope. Thank you.
Applause, and remember to not exceed 1 minute or 2 minutes.
Honorable Secretariat, distinguished delegates, and esteemed guests. As the United Arab Emirates, we stand here to affirm that education is not merely a national duty, it is a global impact, a shared investment in peace, sustainability, and human dignity. In the UAE, we are reimagining education for a rapidly changing world. Through initiatives like the Digital Education School, we provide access to quality education for tens and thousands of refugees and underserved children. Our Centennial 2071 vision prioritizes AI integration, climate literacy, and inclusive learning that empowers both girls and boys to become leaders of tomorrow. But these efforts are not effective in isolation. The UAE believes deeply in multilateral cooperation, especially partnering across regions, to develop forward-thinking curricula, share resources, and promote digital equity. If we are to qualify the education of future generations, we must do more than reform systems. We must build alliances. Let us unite to shape education that breaks cycles of inequality, equips youth for global challenges, and strengthens the fabric of peace. The UAE is committed, and we invite all nations to walk this path with us. Thank you.
Honorable Plenary, the Holy Queen Elizabeth II once said, "Success is often about finding ways of encouraging people to combine their efforts, enthusiasm, and their talents, and their inspiration to work together." We believe King Charles said something similar, but we don't care. These magic words of our favorite Majesty are showing us that the only way mankind can thrive is empathetic cooperation. The previous conservative government of the United Kingdom failed to see this. They rewarded selfish competition but neglected cooperation. They saw students as units of output like in a factory, not as individuals of chances and humanity. But we see education as a public good, not a private race. Potential is universal, but opportunity is not. Hope is universal, but possibilities are not. Knowledge is universal, but possession of it is not. We now call upon the international community consisting of every human individual. Let us fight neo-fascism, that is in fact a backlash of extensive capitalist liberalism. Let us craft an exclusive scaffolding of tutoring, possibilities, and pedagogy so everyone can build their own dream house of skills and life. Long live the Queen.
Delegate, please hold your applause till all speeches were delivered.
Honorable Secretariat, esteemed delegates, and guests. Education is intimately related to every good and to every evil, which, as mortal or as immortal beings, we can desire or dread. This quote by Horace Mann shows the importance of education. Education can be a powerful tool. When used in the wrong way, it can hide propaganda, brainwashing, or even destroy a state. However, we don't believe withholding education from certain groups or societies entirely does any good either. This is why we stand before you today wishing to reform education for the future generations in a reasonable way in which liberty and justice are our priorities. We would like to ask every delegate present today to keep these objectives in mind and vote consciously, so together we may find a solution. Thank you.
Honorable Chair, esteemed delegates, hola amigos. The delegation of Uruguay believes the future begins with education. But education must do more than prepare for jobs. It must teach how to think, how to live together, and how to protect what matters. In Uruguay, public education is a national priority. We have seen that access is not enough. We must also ask what we teach, why we teach it, and for whom. Tomorrow's world will demand more than knowledge. It will demand wisdom. And wisdom is not memorized, it's cultivated. Let us not raise generations who can build machines, but fail to build peace. Let us teach not only answers, but meaning. Thank you, honorable chairs. Gracias.
Honorable chairs, honorable secretariat, distinguished guests, fellow delegates. The history of Vietnam exemplifies the value of education. Following 4 grueling decades of conflict, our nation's infrastructure was in ruins, our nation's resources were depleted, and most of our people lacked the ability to read and write. Seeing no other way to improve our situation, our nation was forced to make the difficult decision to focus on basic education for the many rather than higher education for the few. This combined with nationwide initiatives to teach people trades let us lift 40 million people out of poverty. In addition to this, our nation's GDP is over 100 times higher than a mere 50 years ago. Whilst few nations are able to provide higher education to all, there are some nations that either lack the resources or the willingness to provide even a basic education to all. And that, my fellow delegates, is the exact reason why we have come here together, to fight for the impoverished, the disenfranchised, those who do not have access to education, and to use education as a means to better our planet. We would hereby like to reaffirm our steadfast commitment to finding multilateral solutions to these challenges that we face today. We urge all other delegates here to act in the same manner. Thank you.
We will be entertaining 2 rights of reply again, so dear participants, please raise your hand or your placard until a member of staff approaches you with a microphone. But once again, ambassadors, please keep in mind that you are not allowed to reply.
The United States speaks of the importance of education, but forgets that schools are meant to be safe spaces and not war zones or gun ranges. We therefore ask you to make sure your schools have the appropriate environment before you talk of education on a global level.
Yes, the delegate of Ukraine is right. The war has been dark for the Russian Federation. Our citizens have lost their education, their lives, and their futures, all because of the neo-Nazis ruling Ukraine, which continue to deny us our rightful land.
We do not know on what Western propagandistic media the delegate of Ukraine found these statistics. However, we kindly ask them not to lie into all of our faces and attempt to manipulate the other delegates here. Thank you.
We are going to try showing you the opening video one more time. Hopefully it will work this time. So again, a big thank you to the BALMUN team, film team, for preparing this opener.
The foundation of every state is the education of its youth. With this, a Greek emphasized the importance of education for coexistence in a society over 2,000 years ago. His name was Diogenes, and he was proved right. Today we know that education is the cornerstone of our modern civilization. We live in a time where nothing really seems impossible. All of this, every technology, every social theory, every skill that we know today would never have been possible without the creation and passing on of knowledge over generations. Education is the one resource that cannot be mined or harvested. It is almost endless but difficult to obtain. We can give it to others without losing it ourselves, duplicating it in almost unlimited number of times.
But we must also constantly safeguard and protect them. In today's world, education is facing new challenges. So what could the education of future generations look like? Perhaps we should ask someone who has been guiding students for years as they take their first steps into working life.
I've been a teacher for 43 years by now, and of course it's always important to think about whether school is as I imagine it should be. And I sometimes ask myself what should be different in the future. And maybe the most important point is that teachers and students are kind of partners in learning. That is the more important as the different generations have different opinions about the future. They do have different means to learn or to teach, and I personally believe I can also learn a lot of my students' knowledge when they teach me.
A look into the past shows that, like our society, the school system has always been subject to constant change. Where we once wrote on slates, today we can fall back on far more advanced resources.
Making education fit for the future requires investments in many aspects. One thing is more central today than ever before: digitalization. Appropriate use of digital media in schools opens up new opportunities in the classroom. According to a UNESCO study from 2023, 85% of teachers stated that digital tools have improved their teaching methods. In addition, a survey by the Federal Statistical Office shows that 70% of female students in Germany find digital learning tools motivating. But school should also be a place of curiosity. It should be important to us to really grasp the content. To do this, theory and practice must both be part of the lesson. This is the only way to make connections really clear.
The world is moving at breakneck speed. More communication, more traffic, more energy, more consumption, more waste. The advantages of today's world are hard to overlook. But we also need to tackle the problems that come with them. In a world that requires constant growth but can only provide limited resources, it is up to us to take a responsible and environmentally conscious approach to our lifestyle. That is also something we must pass on to future generations.
So my appeal to all of you is use those few days to really deal with the topics that you have, to find friends, to also have fun, but to basically become tolerant, do something for peace, do something for our environment. And I'm absolutely sure that young people like you who are engaged will do a lot to make our world a better place.
We will now continue to present our great chairs that make this conference possible. We begin with the chairs of the Security Council. Their topics are the situation of the South China Sea, as well as strengthening the partnership between the UN and the African Union on the issues of peace and security in Africa. Giselle Bouillon, Philippe Harashta, and Benjamin von Schweinitz, please rise. This is your applause.
Thank Thank you. Next, the chairs of the Economical and Social Council. Their topics for this year's conference are examining global tax systems and their impact on society, advancing programs for economically disadvantaged people to ensure appropriate education. This committee will be chaired by Benjamin Missouri, Victoria Lucander, and Daniel Jose Gonzalez Bertoli. Dear chairs, please rise. This is your applause.
The topics of the first General Assembly are installing disarmament and non-proliferation education to achieve sustainable peace and security, and rethinking universal nuclear disarmament. The chairs are David Bella, Dylan Appelsing, and Faustine Bonson. Dear chairs, please rise. This is your applause.
Next is the Social, Humanitarian, and Cultural Committee. Their topics this year are fostering accessibility through reconstructing urban and rural infrastructure, as well as media, and preventing conflict-related sexual violence as one of history's greatest silences. The chairs are Julian Kanfolk, Helena Gabrecht, and Anna Kabrantnokova. Dear chairs, please rise. This is your applause.
Now to the Special Political and Decolonization Committee, where the topics furthering and sustaining education initiatives to strengthen communal ties in the global south and limiting the use of unchecked AI as a threat to democratic systems. The chairs are Maraki Tadesi, Andreas Deratowski, and Karolina Humildova. Dear chairs, please rise. This is your applause.
And last but not least, the Environment Assembly with the topics promoting the teaching and studying of environmental issues for an inclusive and livable future, and marine and water pollution as a danger to food security. The chairs are Antonin Babous, Malcolm Wood, and Barry Tabachnikov.
The opening ceremony is coming to an end. We want to thank all speakers again for their time and effort. We wish all participants fruitful debates and successful work towards the secure education of future generations. Let's make this BALMUN conference a meaningful and impactful experience for everyone.
You can find all guest speakers, the room of your committee, and some guidance for the delegates in our program, which you can find in the folders that were handed to you. In order to not miss anything, you can follow the Baltic Herald on Instagram, where they will provide you with lots of information. The account is called @Baltic__Herald. But they also provide us with a freshly printed Baltic Herald each day of the conference, which we are already looking forward to.
But before we officially kick off the 17th edition of our conference and dive into the exciting world of diplomacy, debate, and dramatic motions, we have one more very important item.
As some of you know, 2 of our delegates celebrated their birthdays during yesterday's informal meeting, and were, of course, properly congratulated.
But today we've got another birthday in the house, so please join us in wishing a very happy birthday to Helena Hafer.
Helena, we hope your day is filled with great speeches, excellent block building, and if the universe is kind, at least one piece of cake.
And speaking of cake, the catering team has prepared a cookie break in the hallway for us, which will be from 11:45 until 12 p.m. Then the committees will be in session. Please find yourselves in your assigned rooms at 12 p.m. It is only respectful for you to be on time. The staggered lunch break will begin at 1:15 p.m.
And with that, the opening ceremony has officially come to an end. We wish you all a tasteful cookie break.